Shabbat shalom, everyone. You can keep playing. You can be playing Spike through this. It's okay. Keep playing a little bit. Sounds nice. So we are welcoming the Davidson Seminar students from HUC-JIR to this Shabbat experience. It's not technically a worship service, although if you are just feeling like you have to pray, it's not forbidden. So please, by all means. And yet, this is really a chance for us to highlight our prayer book, Shema Yisrael, which for the students, last night we talked about some of Temple Israel's firsts, and this is the first fully illuminated prayer book in Jewish history. And there's a reason for that. The reason is that up until 1998, with the original Shema Yisrael, which looks more like this, it was actually forbidden to illuminate a Siddur. Now, Haggadot were, of course, beautifully illuminated, the Sarajevo most famously. But there was actually a restriction against using artwork and especially color in a Siddur. And we broke that law because we really wanted a book that people would want to touch. And we used a countervailing Jewish principle of Hiddur mitzvah. And of course, by the way, rabbinical students, if I'm explaining things that you think I shouldn't be explaining because you've been through 4 years of rabbinical school, please know there's a whole bunch of people auditing this course through Facebook and YouTube. And if, by the way, you're one of those people sitting in and I talk about something that you don't understand, Rabbi later is on the chat. All you do is put your questions in there and she will ably answer. And don't be shy. If you don't understand it, I'm sure someone else doesn't as well. In any case, we use the concept of Hiddur mitzvah, the idea that you beautify sacred objects, whether it be an ark in a synagogue, in a sanctuary, or a beautiful Kiddush cup, or a candlesticks. We beautify those things to make them more joyful, more spiritual, and we felt that that's the way prayer books should be as well. So we hired an amazing designer, Yiftach Mas, in Israel, and he took actually elements of the Sarajevo Haggadah. He digitized them, pulled them apart, and put them together into frames that, I don't know if you can see this, frames that for every page, a different frame that is traditional because it comes from the Sarajevo Haggadah, but entirely new and entirely a new piece of art. So that's the original sort of innovation of this particular prayer book. Just a funny story about it. The Laker family graciously donated the funds to make this possible, and we had a dedication that was scheduled for a certain date when they could be there. And the first version of the book we had decided to print in Israel. That was a mistake because the books got stopped at the border, and they would not let the books in. They must have thought it was contraband. They would not let the books in to the United States. I happened to be in Israel at the time with a group of Orthodox, Reform, and conservative young adults, and they were all gracious enough to smuggle in 10 books apiece, so that we had 200 for the dedication here in our sanctuary. So that's the short story of Shema Yisrael, our Temple Israel prayer book. And I just want to, I'm going to screen share here for a second. Here we go. These slides don't give you a full vision of what the book looks like, but I think you can see from this page that you can almost see the elements of the Sarajevo Haggadah, if you're familiar with it, that have been that adorn each of the pages. And we're going to start with Spike's Shir Chadash. So I thought we'd look at those pages a bit. So one thing we realized with the second edition of Shema Yisrael is that most prayer books are written for adults, which is great, but they're used 80% of the time for bar and bat mitzvah. So we decided to create some readings specifically for bar and bat mitzvah, including this morning, our wonderful bat mitzvah. Ashley read this to her family and friends. As I stand before my community, my family and friends, I sing unto God a song of tradition and of change, a song that is both old and yet very, very new. For it is the same song that Moses and Miriam sang at the shores of the Red Sea, and it is my song, an ancient melody that will lead me, I pray, to my own promised land of maturity, responsibility, and freedom. And then we had a different version. One of the things about writing your own Siddur is that you get to be a liturgist. You get to write prayers. Most of them feel fairly poetic, but every once in a while we were able to do something a little out there. This was written by Rabbi Hornston. I love it because it's definitely out there. Sing a new song to Adonai. If only the psalmist knew what he was asking. I have music in my heart. Sometimes it's classical, sometimes it's folk, and sometimes it's that funky rock and roll. Does this count? I hope so, because I'm singing my heart out to you, O God, source of all music and of every new song, including this one by Spike.
Boker Tov, y'all. It's almost noon, so we're going to bring our energy, our Shabbos energy. Hopefully you got to sleep in a little bit. Unless you're like me and you had to walk the dog bright and early. Sit up straight, feet on the ground, deep breath in, slowly out. Your part goes like this. Shiru, Shiru Ladonai. Can we do that together? Here we go. 1, 2, 3. Shiru, Shiru Ladonai. Shiru Shir Chadash. It's that same melody 4 times in a row. Shiru Ladonai, sing out. Shiru, Shiru Ladonai. Kol haaretz. Shiru, Shiru Ladonai. Baruch Hu Shemo. Unto God, sing a song. Let the whole world, sing along. Raise your voice, let the whole earth rejoice. 'Cause we're all just singing a new song. Shiru Ladonai, sing out loud. Shiru, Shiru Ladonai. Shiru Shir Chadash. Shiru Ladonai, here we go. Shiru, Shiru Ladonai. Kol haaretz. Shiru Ladonai, Baruch Hu Shemo. Adonai, Baruch Hu Shemo. Now we hit same melody, new words. Basru meyom leyom. Basru meyom leyom. Yeshuato. Unto God, sing a song. Let the world, the whole world, sing along. Raise your voice, let the whole earth rejoice. 'Cause we're all just singing a new song. We're singing a new song. You wanna hit that with me one time? We'll tag it, as we say. We're singing a new song.
So beautiful. Thank you, Spike. I'm so happy we have Spike here as our artist in residence for 1.5 years now. He uplifts the whole place. The young people love that song in particular. And I want to check, Spike. I learned something from every time you sing. You did like a curtailed shout out there with the Baruch Hu Shemo. You did like half the line and then gave us the new ending. Wait, do you have a name for that? I've never seen that before.
No, I don't have a name. It's just, I kind of... you understand the pattern of the song leading, and if you're with smart people, as rabbinical students tend to be, coming from a long line of rabbinical students, if you're doing the same thing over and over again, you can kind of trust that they've got that part down by the fifth or sixth time, and so you feed the part that changes, and that's, just a song leading technique.
Yeah, it's got to have a name, and then trademark!
That's right.
And along with Spike, we have a number of other composers. We want to feature another that writes a lot of stuff, is a friend of Temple Israel. His name is Ari Posner. You're going to hear 3 of his pieces that may be new to you, and they're all on our last album, so check out the recordings if you want to. But he's a talented Canadian, won a bunch of awards for TV and film. And when he was writing our Barhu, he wanted to integrate the reading you're seeing on your screen from the prayer book. So I sent him this whole page with all the readings that Rabbi Yedwab put in for before the Barhu. He zoned in on the top one. And you'll hear he integrate a little bit of our own Siddur into the setting itself of the Barhu, which we sing at Temple and which we'll sing now. And the reading, it happens to be one that I wrote, and it was focusing on what we're preparing for as we get to the blessings of the Shema, as we pass the Barhu, which is really vibing with the oneness that the Shema is teaching. And the deepest sense of that oneness is, of course, not just that there's one God, but in fact that there's only one being. There's no one here but God. There's not you with your breath, we with my breath. There's not your congregation over there, my congregation over here. There's not you singing your song, me singing my song. There's just one. There's just one being. It's kind of like if I were to look at a rainbow and say, well, there's one color here, one color here. I'm pointing in 2 directions, aren't I? But I'm pointing at one light. So vibing with that. And when we vibe with that, we draw down this oneness and we make a home for that oneness here in our own lives. We read together. We call each other to worship, although we forget and sometimes do not listen. We call each other to worship with one breath, one song, one voice, at this sacred time, which is every time, in this sacred place, which is every place, with this sacred congregation, which is every congregation. We unfold together into the endless blessing of the eternal and call each other to worship.
Listen up, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la. Everybody sing that, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la. Very nice. Listen, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la. Your turn, ya la la. One slide back to the reading that we had. There's a cool bridge in this Baruch Hu that features those middle couple of lines from the reading. It goes like this: with one breath, with one song, with one voice, Baruch Hu. Try with one breath, with one song, with one voice.
Um, So I just want to point out another feature of this book. Other prayer books have done this, but it's very prominent in Shema Yisrael, and that are the prayer notes. We believe that prayer is really a symphony with a crescendo and a decrescendo, and that if you don't understand where you are in the service, you're not really getting the full beauty of the symphony. And so on every prayer rubric takes up a 2-page folio. So that if you're seeing the Baruch Hu, you're seeing 2 pages of it spread out in front of you, and it includes the Hebrew and the English and some creative readings, as you just saw with Michael's beautiful reading. But it also includes these prayer notes so that people have a sense of where they are in the service. It also gives them something to do if the sermon is particularly boring. So that's one aspect of the prayer book. And I just want to mention. For Shema Yisrael, the first, I did, except for the traditional readings, I did a good deal of the writing, and I like to say that a rabbi only has one siddur in him or her. That really took every bit of creativity out of me, and I really wasn't prepared to do another one. We needed one, and so I turned to my colleagues. And it turns out that I'm blessed with a whole house full of paitanim here. I mean, it was unbelievable the kind of creativity that came out of my colleagues. And so a good portion of these readings are written by the cantors, the rabbis, and even some of their spouses, which was really interesting. Okay, so we're going to move on to the Shema. Again, this is a 2-page folio. I apologize, we didn't make the slides this way. If you saw the book, there'd be another side of the page with readings, all having to do with the Shema. And you see the prayer notes there that I mentioned. But here's, the book came out in 1998, just a little bit after we had created a program called Shabbat Unplugged. Sort of a lot like Shabbat Live, Friday Night Live in LA, perhaps. But we found that although we were very happy to steal from Jewish composers, Spike wasn't really around at that time, at least not to our knowledge. He was there because I knew his parents, but he wasn't there as a songwriter. But we were very happy to steal from Rick Recht and whoever else was writing beautiful Jewish music. But we found that there were some settings that just did not fit what we were teaching. And that was especially true with the Shema. We were teaching our congregation that you should say the Shema over and over and over again, as the rabbis teach, until you reach a sense of kavanah, and yet of intention, of spirituality. And yet every setting that we found, the one from Vienna, the one that came from Sinai, according to people, which is a Viennese waltz, the one from Tzvika Peak, which is a Jewish rock and roll group, they're all basically A-B, A-B. It's very hard to get into a sense of spirituality, of kavanah, with 2 shots at it, basically. So we, Scott Stern, who is my co-composer, and myself wrote a setting for the Shema that actually can be said over and over and over again. We won't do this today, but when it's being done at the shul, those who are playing don't really know how many verses, how many times it's going to go around. It just is a matter of what we feel in the room. And we think that's an important difference. Not that you should adopt this Shema, but we do think that people writing Jewish music should adopt this, what would I call it, this format. So with that, we're going to sing the Shema over and over again.
Same melody. Last time, Shema. Shema. Shema Yisrael. Adonai. Eloheinu. Eloheinu. Adonai
Okay. I told you not to pray. No, I'm kidding. Just to show you what the two-page layout would look like, here are some readings about freedom, and on the facing page would be the text of the Micha Mocha. So just to give you an idea, these are not, one of the things I didn't like about traditional prayer books is they just run on. And I wanted you, when you were in Micha Mocha land, I wanted you to be in Micha Mocha land, where freedom was what you were looking at and what you were, and it takes a lot of planning, but I think it worked out pretty well. And I do want to go through one other thing. If you ever are, by the way, we're doing this seminar, even though I am not sure that prayer books are Siddurim are long for this world. Temple Israel 20 something years ago created the first PowerPoint prayer book for Shabbat Unplugged, because we wanted people to have their hands open and be able to look up and be able to clap their hands and put their arms around everyone and sing. And now we have big, what do you call them? Big screens in the sanctuary. And I don't know how long books are going to be around when it comes to prayer. There's going to be better options coming up. And yet I love Siddurim. I can't help it. So I'm still excited about them, even though they may be obsolete by the time you're my age and in the rabbinate as long as I've been. In any case, if you do ever produce a Siddur, it's all about editing, and editing. This book has been edited by myself, by Rabbi Hornston. We actually hired several editors to find mistakes, and yet the book was published. And the first time we go to lead into the Micha Mocha, the rabbi reads, I was there. I turned bricks into straw. I ate unleavened cakes as we hurried to freedom. I saw the seas part. I was there. I sang. I danced. I am free. Beautiful reading by my colleague, Rabbi Kaluzny. The only little problem is none of the editors caught the fact that you can't really turn bricks into straw. It's the other way around. You turn straw into bricks. So we just ignored that reading, sadly, for the past 10 years. And because of the pandemic, we're not really using a prayer book right now for our bar mitzvah celebrants. And this is a perfect reading for a 13-year-old. So now, for the first time since the book was published, our young people get up on the bima and, in any case, they read it straw into bricks. Yeah. And Jen later says it's from the 10 Commandments, bricks without straw. All of us know the line and nobody caught it. So that was just be careful when you're publishing. And then I do want to read, just because of what's going on in the world right now, I do want to read one of my very few writings for this particular Siddur. Standing at the waters of the Red Sea, at the Mason-Dixon line, at the walls of the Warsaw Ghetto, the Berlin Wall, the wall that separates men from women, the privileged from the persecuted, perpetrator from victim, the master from the slave. We cry out as did our ancestors in ancient days, let my people go, let all God's people be free, so that we may dance and sing together once again at the shores of the Red Sea as we sing together.
Mi
Beautiful. We come to the Amidah, to the Amida, and here was really, I think, maybe the most important innovation of this particular book. Since we published in 1998, I think just about every prayer book, including Mishkan, has picked up some aspect of this. We're not going to pray the entire Amida, although you're free to. But just for those who are listening online, the Amida, which is also called the Shemona Esrei, because in the weekday you have 18 benedictions. They're really 19. It's a long story. But on Shabbat you don't have bakashot, you don't have requests, so there's not as many. But what you may not know is that the original text of the Amida was fluid. It was a moment for the worshiper. Up until then, you've been holding hands with your congregation, going through your history and your theology together. The Amida was a time for you to step forward and have some one-on-one time with your God. And it was meant to be very personal. And it was. It was just a collection of, originally, it was a collection of themes that the worshiper would meditate on in their own words. But Judah Nasi, Judah the prince, came along, by the way, my least favorite sage, and decided that Jews could not be trusted to do such a thing, and fixed the prayers of the Amida and made them and canonized them. So we were in a quandary when we went to publish this book. What do we do about that? We believe in the free flow sort of prayer, but on the other hand, we weren't ready to just reject the traditional, quote unquote, traditional Amida. So what we did, and here's the way the book really looks with these 2-page folios. What we did is we put the more traditional, at least more orthodox version of the Amida, the Yehuda Hanasi version, if you will, on the right side of every 2-page folio. And on the left side were meditations on the theme of the prayer. So because Thanksgiving is coming, I of course chose Thanksgiving as our sort of example. And so you can see on the right side we have what you would pray if you're davening, if you will, the Amida. But on the left side we have 3 meditations. Several of them. One of them is from Nachman of Bratslav. You also have the famous saying about 2 peteks, and finally a poem at the bottom, which, because it's Thanksgiving week, I think we'll go with that one. It reads, I think this was one of mine also, actually, now that I look at it. I try to be thankful for all of the blessings in my life, but I feel I must ask, if you are indeed watching over us from above, why do bad things happen to people I love? Up until now, I have been looking for you in the heavens, an old man with a white beard and a staff, sitting on a throne in the vast open spaces. But perhaps I should have been looking instead in the smallest of places. The curl of a lip which leads to a smile, the softness of babies, the first tooth of a child, a loving response, an altruistic turn, the passing of time, the healing of a burn. It would be so much easier if fairy tales did come true, if the good were rewarded and righteousness fell from the heavens like dew. I still am not sure exactly what I believe or what my life is leading to, but in this quiet moment of reflection, I do feel grateful for the chance to just sit and talk with you. And so I thought we'd just spend a moment of meditation in our own homes as we pray or meditate silently.
So, I think that the majority of us Jewish communities approach our relationship with Jewish musicians in a very specific way. And we see a lot of like song leaders join the temple to do Sunday school music or Saturday school music, depending on where you are, and that's kind of it, right? So the relationship that I've been building with Temple Israel over the last year and a half is something a little bit different, and I think is a model going forward, because I don't know if you've noticed, if your social media feed looks like mine, which I assume it is because you're all rabbinical students, in more Jewish singers and songwriters even 5 years ago. And so this ability to invite singer-songwriters and educators into our communities as more than just, hey, sing Hine Matov with the preschool for 15 minutes every Sunday morning, has the ability to enhance Judaism in the sanctuary, but also outside of the sanctuary. So I have different responsibilities here with the Temple Israel community. I do Sunday school music on certain weekends. Like most of you saw last night, I had helped to lead communal services, adult services as well. I run programming. I train a cohort of teen song leaders. Some other programs which are really great, song leading on teen retreats when those are safe to do. One of my absolute favorite things to do is to be able to offer creative songwriting and song commissions to this community. And so as you kind of go through your rabbinical school, I'm not here to like pitch you on why you should hire people, but think about the ways in which bringing in artists outside of clergy can enhance the entire spirit of the community. Because sure, rabbis and cantors also can write songs and should, and run programming and should, but they have a lot of other responsibilities that I don't have. And I am eternally grateful to have this relationship here in the middle of a global pandemic when a lot of my colleagues are not doing so well because we can't travel. And I spend 2 weekends a month here with the synagogue and 2 in better times on the road to still be able to sing with other communities. And without Temple Israel, I would be in a much worse place and have to really figure out kind of what was happening in my life right now. And so it's really special for me to have that, to know that this relationship then is built on kind of that deep, deep compassion and trust, and to be able to offer things to them in return that they might not otherwise get. So in that vein, I wanted to share this melody for the priestly benediction. That Rabbi Yedwab asked me to compose for Rabbi Josh Bennett's 25th anniversary of the temple. Yivarechecha Adonai V'yishmerecha פניו אליך ויחונך יישא אדוני פניו אליך וישם לך shalom. And because Temple Israel is a really special community that has two cantors and a singing rabbi, multiple singing rabbis actually, I wrote this in 3 sections. So there's that Hebrew section, and then there's a duet, which I'll attempt to do now, with a Hebrew and then an English descant, and then a 3-part harmony in at the end with a trio singing the Hebrew. And actually, Cantor Ross Woolman, if any of you know Cantor Ross out in Phoenix, approached me and said, this is really beautiful, except when are we supposed to use it? It's so long, it's like 3 minutes, and usually we only do this once in a service. And I was like, yeah, that's a really great point. The point of writing it in all those 3 parts is that now, depending on how your community can use it, you should use that. So if it's only you and a pianist or a guitarist, you can sing the first part. If there's 2 of you that can sing, you can sing it back and forth. And if you have a trio or more singers who want to sing it in harmony, that's great too. You're not expected to sing all the way through. So one more time. We'll see if I can sing back to myself. Yivarechecha Adonai, may God bless you and keep you. Vishmerecha Adonai, shine a light on you and be gracious to you. Ye may God's face turn to you. V'yasem lecha, v'yasem lecha, v'yasem lecha shalom. Shalom.
That actually makes me cry every time I hear it. I just want to add to a little bit of what Spike had to say. When the reason I thought of this was because Spike was nice enough to have written a song for Rabbi Loss's 70th birthday, and it was more like a personal song. It was not something that was going to get put on a record album. It was beautiful, so I thought I asked him to do a song for Rabbi Bennett, thinking it would be in the same vein. And little did I know it would end up being this masterpiece, which I believe will be the melody for the that we sing to the Yivarechecha for decades to come. As I said, it always brings me to tears. And it also brings me to the next song. So I hear that in this rabbinical class, there's one of you that hates Debbie Friedman. Is that true? Just raise your hand if you're the one that hates Debbie Friedman. Well, I know that's not actually true, but I will admit, even though Debbie was a good friend of mine, a very good friend of mine, that I was getting a little tired of the Misha Beirach. First of all, I'm not sure she used the right text. And when Scott and I wrote the music for Shabbat Unplugged, we actually used El Na Rafanallah. I think we were among the early composers who did so. And I actually like the version that we wrote. But then Cantor Smolash came, and he'll talk about how he did, but I just want to say, then he came up with this text I had never thought of in this context, and wrote what I think is the most beautiful prayer for healing I've ever heard, with no offense to my good friend Debbie Friedman. So I just want to put that out there. And Michael, perhaps talk a little bit about the process, and then let's hear it.
Yeah, absolutely. Paul wrote a beautiful piece to El Na Rafanallah. That's another text that's been set, and we sang that for many years. Beautiful in our services. But yeah, I was looking for another one besides the healing prayer from the Aleinu, the Mishabera for healing of the Torah service, the El Narufanallah from the Torah. Was there another text? And I realized there's this Psalm 6, which, if you read how the traditional community sees it, is literally this. It is a prayer for healing and considered a powerful prayer, often said. It's an awe-inspiring prayer for one who is ill, to pray that God heal them, body and soul. If you offer this prayer devoutly with a broken heart, God will accept your prayer, that kind of stuff. And I thought, how beautiful to find a fresh text that hasn't been composed yet, I don't think. I also wrote a piece that I thought would fit into services much in the same way that Debbie Friedman's beautiful Misha Barak does. Not a big dramatic piece, but just something that you could sing, sincerely offer your prayers for healing, and have as an option every now and then. The Hebrew text is Choneni Adonai ki umlal ani. So be gracious to me, God, because I'm faint, I'm exhausted, I'm broken. Rafa'eni Adonai ki nivhalu atzamai. Heal me, God, because my bones are terrified. And I think in this time of COVID, when we really have people in our community that are, God forbid, struggling for everything, it certainly feels powerful to me to offer up.
That's beautiful, Cantor. We're about to end our seminar, if you will, our Shabbat experience. But this would be a good time if any of you want to unmute yourselves and ask a question. This would be sort of the last chance, at least until we schmooze later in the evening. I do want to. I hope basically that what you're understanding here is not that that anyone should will in your careers be using this prayer book. It's very unlikely, but there are some concepts here that I think are important. Many of them come to me from my teacher, Larry Hoffman, and the idea of that's right. Rabbi later writes, unless one of you end up at Temple Israel with us, in which case you will use this Siddur. But I do think that the concepts, Hiddur mitzvah, the beautification of the mitzvah, the concept of the 2-page folio where the prayer rubrics have space for themselves to be understood and enjoyed, the idea of letting people know where they are in the service and why they're praying what they're praying, that it's not just one long string of prayers. And of course, the creativity of songwriters to create settings that actually reflect the meaning and the history of the particular prayer. And not to mention the fun of just being a paitan and writing your own prayers, which I think is one of the great joys of being a rabbi or a cantor. So those principles I hope you'll take with you. I'm glad to answer any questions later if you want to contact me directly. And the final song is one that I asked Spike will be playing it, but I specifically asked the Cantor to include it. It's not written by, it's arranged by Cantor Smolash, I guess is the best way to put it. And this sort of has to go with, it's the same issue with the Misha Beirach. You know, sometimes things that are traditional, you can't get rid of them. You just can't. You can't get rid of the traditional melody for the Ein Keloheinu. It's just too ingrained in our people's kishkas. On the other hand, it's saccharine sweet and drives me absolutely crazy. I just can't sing it anymore. Cantor and I, Michael and I, were talking about this one day, and the next thing I know, he comes to services, and at the end of the service, I announced the page, and I'm expecting the same old Ein Keloheinu, and this is what appears, and we've been singing that joyfully ever since, and personally, I love it. So, Spike, would you sing us out, if you will?
So you guys remember when we would always sing Salam at summer camp? And everyone would be like, this is the remix. And it just wasn't a remix. It was the same version over. So this is like what that was supposed to be. That I think is the best way to do it. So this is Ein Keloheinu by Julius Freudenthal. I got my Shireen going on. Michael's like, yeah, Freudenthal. Remixed by the jazzy Cantor Michael Smolash. So I'm not going to teach this to you because I think you'll pick it up. Ein Keloheinu, Ein Kadoneinu, Ein Kemalkeinu, Ein Kemoshiach. You can join in with me, please. Mi Keloheinu, Mi Kadoneinu, Mi Kemalkeinu, Mi Kemoshiach. Now there is a new part that I think you'll pick up relatively quickly because it's always good to know what we're singing. Who is like our God? Who is like our God? No death, no del Eloheinu, no del Adoneinu, no del Malkeinu, no del Moshiach.
see what a joy Shabbat here at Temple is. We have this every week with Rabbi Yedwab's gorgeous Siddur and gorgeous prayers with this kind of beautiful music from Spike and everyone else here. I wish you that kind of joy this Shabbat and every Shabbat. To our students, please stay in touch as you finish school. Please stay in touch as you head out and serve our communities. We love to hear from you and know what's going on. And wishing you Shabbat Shalom from all of us.
Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Shabbat Shalom.
יישר כוח, תודה.